So how do you buy software development the agile way? The government is well known as the worst bureaucratic organization, particularly the DoD. We call it a behemoth for a reason. 800 billion of budget a year in the Department of Defense alone. Mind-boggling. From fixed price contract to cost reimbursement contracts, to incentive contracts, to infinite delivery contracts, to time and material, all the way to basic ordering agreements and more. I often argue that to prevent malicious or incompetent government employees, overzealous bureaucrats ended up creating more problems by trying to prevent them. Too many regulations, policies, and complex acquisition rules. Many like me believe that we end up wasting 60 cents on each dollar spent. That's right. I bet this is much worse than the kind of waste or fraud we could ever see with proper and common sense due diligence. Think about the 800 billion spent a year. That effectively means that 480 billion are wasted down in the bureaucratic processes, saving taxpayer money. Scary, huh? Every time someone abused the system, someone thought creating a process to prevent it was a good idea. It may sound pretty small, but it's overreacting and making the problem even worse. That's the typical story of the solution being worse than the problem. Now, you probably don't want to be that person or that organization, right? So we know the importance of agility, and we do not just use Agile for software development. You want your entire organization, particularly its acquisition and contracting arm, to be agile. You definitely don't want to wait for a contract change only to change your stuck-in-time scope of work. All right, so how do we do this? Well, first of all, you want to decouple your hardware and software. That doesn't mean that hardware can be agile, by the way. Think of replacing hardware like cattle, leasing it, or whatever works for you. Hardware gets stale, but it doesn't mean that you can't easily swap it. Of course, if your system runs on the cloud, that's pretty simple. If you're building a jet or a ship, think of ways to easily swap hardware. Now, when it comes to software, you don't want to be in a contract with a predefined scope and a fixed price that is stuck in time. That won't work. Sure, on principle, that sounds good, assuming you know exactly what you want and you don't need to learn or change the scope. That can happen for very, very small projects that don't include any innovation. But let's face it, it's probably not the right concept for most of your custom software engagements. But wait, scope creep. You are taught to ensure that it doesn't happen, right? Well, sure, adding scope will delay the project, cost more money, and it's never ending. Well, here's the thing. Agile and DevSecOps enable you to deliver continuously with small incremental changes in production. But first of all, you're not waiting forever. You're not waiting for something to be delivered to your end user after years. They see the results bi-weekly or even daily. But you're also learning, right? Fail fast, learn fast, don't fail twice for the same reason. If you haven't seen our segment on that, check it out now. Alright, so if you're learning that a feature that you thought was needed didn't bring the value to your end user you thought would, do you still waste time and money to build it? Of course not. And let's not forget, software is never done. It continuously evolves, so it isn't obsolete. So your scope can't be stuck in time. Ideally, you want to cut what you used to call a scope of work into themes, then cut it into epics, then into user story. User story should be tasks that can be done in a 2-week cycle maximum. You need to learn how to t-shirt size your epics so that you can estimate the amount of work on those epics, and then you can cut it into 2 weeks user story. So people even say you don't have to t-shirt size things and you can just wing it. I'm not a big fan of that, but that's okay. So effectively, your backlog will still be able to tell you how much pending work you have. You can order it by priority, and you can see its complexity in real time. That's your backlog. You need to track the right metrics so that you can ensure that you never fail to deliver a user story in a 2-week sprint. That should be extremely rare. If this keeps happening, either you're failing at cutting user stories correctly into 2-week cycles, or your team is not meeting its delivery capacity. Either way, it isn't good. All right, so you have your themes, very large chunk of work, your epics, a little smaller but still too big, and your user story usually down to smaller features that can be built within 2 weeks. Now, how do you staff your teams to deliver capacity of work? That's right. Think about it for a minute. All this is capacity of work. The more people you have, the more sprints you can achieve. The more sprints you can achieve, the faster you can deliver your backlog. Then all it is about is staffing your team with the right skills and talent so that you can deliver rapidly and track the metrics to ensure you're meeting your estimated capacity of work. So that's like time and material contract, right? Well, sort of, but there is a huge difference here. First, with a normal time and material contract, it's very common that when teams fail to deliver, they still get paid. So they don't care. They spend the time. You're not getting what you were supposed to be getting. Terrible, right? In our case, though, contract would have a very precise additional clause and a definition of work done. That means work isn't done until it meets those requirements, and they cannot be paid for the work if the work is not in the deliverable state. But how do you define deliverable states, right? Those clauses usually require some of the following things. For example, you could mandate that the contractor use the organization's DevSecOps stack, including delivering the code continuously in your Git repo multiple times a day. They will also ensure that the code passes all of your continuous integration and continuous delivery gates. That includes building the code, your cyber gates, and your testing gates. That makes sure that the code will meet the requirement to be deployed in production, that you're not building tremendous testing or cyber debt. You will also make sure that they use the provided collaboration solution that tracks the agile backlog and work being done so that you can leverage the right metrics to track the work. They will have to meet the predefined service level indicators such as code quality, number of defects, etc. So they're not trading velocity for quality or security. Check out our segment on the DORA metrics and on SLIs, SLOs, and SLAs. So now, thanks to all of these indicators, and of course, thanks to your CI/CD pipeline enforcement and continuous delivery in production, you're not just buying potential wasted time. You're buying skills with the talent and their time, of course, but with a very well-defined quality, security, and testing set of expectations to pass to the deliverable state. You're buying capacity of work with a well-defined outcome and quality, security, and testing gates. So the last thing you will need is a way to assess the talent. At Platform One, we had a pretty good process with some questionnaire, hands-on work, and I was even conducting interviews of top talent during our RFPs to see if the talent proposed will meet our needs. Of course, if the backlog can change, you'll need to estimate what kind of skills and talent you're going to need. Are you going to need software developers, UX designers, cybersecurity engineers, architects, and so on? We also use the concept of a key leadership position to ensure that the contractor wouldn't just swap talent on us after a while. And if they did, they would have to pass a new interview process again to replace that critical talent by somebody else. Don't forget, this is not just development work. You will need some cyber experience, testing, and more importantly, operations teams with cybersecurity engineers. And even for development work, you may need some DevSecOps engineers, architects, different kind of developers with different backgrounds in different programming languages and full stack and UX people as well. Don't forget, of course, your project managers and broader cloud native architects. The capacity of work you're getting will be based on their costs and your budget's limitations, of course. But don't forget that the teams are expected to learn and improve, so your capacity of work will grow slowly over time. So your budget defines effectively how much capacity you can buy and how many people you can get access to with what skills. And because they will improve and get better slowly over time, your capacity of work will slowly grow as well. Of course, you will be learning from the feedback of your users. You will have to add new features, remove features not needed from your backlog, and groom it to ensure you bring the best value to them. Grooming is the hardest part of the job since you have a limited capacity of work defined by your budget, and you want to prioritize the right features you want to focus your time on. Since software is never done, this is a never-ending cycle of continuous delivery of work in production in the hands of your end users. Now, it doesn't mean that there is a one-size-fits-all approach to software contracting. For example, if you need licenses of commercial tools, you can use a very different contract to buy those. You still want to be agile and be able to try new tools, scale up and down licenses as needed, and maybe even buy SaaS solutions as well. That gives you a lot of options when it comes to acquisition strategy. Now you get it. Your funding will not define how many features you'll be building in a scope of work. That's the wrong way to think about it. Instead, your funding defines how many people you get in your team and what capacity it will have to produce production quality work and features. The more capacity, the more features will be delivered faster. Just like if you were to create your own software company startup tomorrow, how would you build your product? You would hire people based on the funding you have, and based on the number of people you have, you would prioritize your features and groom your backlog and continuously deliver features so that your first customers could give you feedback so that you can learn and see what sticks and continuously improve honestly until you decide to sell the company for $1 billion, right? There you have it. Cut your initial scope of work into an agile backlog with themes, epics, and user story. Implement the DevSecOps platforms with a full stack to ensure the right service level indicators and gates are implemented. Groom your backlog, pick the right talent, build an agile and DevSecOps culture, track the right metrics, and fail fast, learn fast, but don't fail twice for the same reason. And you're on your way to be a real agile organization.